Hi, I'm Jay Shakur with Bright News, and welcome to this debate and discussion. I sit down and talk with Jalen Johnson, who's running for city commissioner in Albany, Georgia. Welcome, Jalen.
Thank you for having me, Jay.
All right, Jalen, thank you for talking with me, taking the time to talk with me. I guess I want your to start off just your hot take on the in the moment about the political climate, your general take on the political climate in our country right now.
Yeah, I think yesterday kind of has shaken everything up with everybody's political climate. But just kind of from what I'm seeing as a Black man in America, you're seeing rhetoric that we've never seen before. I mean, there is a movement, especially here in my state of Georgia, where you have kind of the Stacey Abrams era, but then you still have the staunch, Trump supporting Republicans who are trying to balance the state. I mean, we have a Republican governor and a Republican majority in the state legislature, but people are saying that that could all change. I mean, we saw voter turnouts go through the roof for the Democrats last year. So I'm thinking that everybody's politically engaged, everybody's active, and the sides are as polarized as ever. I mean, you got people who, they already hated Trump, but now they hate him even more after January 6th. And then you have people who on the left who they either love Biden or they hate him. I mean, there's just no in between. Everybody's kind of on thin ice, and politics right now is at the highest level that I've ever seen. And when I talk to my grandparents, they've never seen it like this either. So very polarized.
So, what would you're running currently for city commissioner in Albany, Georgia. You're from East Albany. You grew up there, born and raised.
Yeah.
You have a ton of experience in politics. You've worked on Capitol Hill. You worked on a presidential campaign. What would be different, particularly about you as a candidate? And then I want to, broaden it out into just in general Blacks in politics.
Yeah. No, I mean, coming from Albany, Georgia, which is a majority Black city, our leadership for years has been majority Black. And you kind of have that mindset. So for me, when I was growing up there, I was born and raised to a single mom. My dad was never in my life. And I had two older brothers who kind of fell by the wayside kind of early on, with the drug and with the gang life. And that was an example for me of what I did not want my life to look like or what I did not want to do. And it just so happened that my beliefs and even the things that we were being taught by my grandparents and by my mom, I mean, the strong love for family, the strong love for faith, the strong love for just what you own, being comfortable with what you own and loving that is inherently conservative. So me growing up and kind of hearing this rhetoric from the majority Black crowd in Albany saying that, oh, white people are bad or police officers are bad, and just telling you everything over and over again to try to perpetrate this victim mentality, it kind of was a deflection for what I was trying to do. If I was trying to be better than my current situation, I couldn't allow that rhetoric of being a victim and blaming other people for everything that I've ever been through be who I was, because I could never go any further than where my brothers were or even where my mom was if I kept that same stagnant mentality. So that's kind of how Albany was for me. And once I branched out of that, I was the first in my family to go to college. I went off to Washington, D.C. and interned for a senator, then became a Capitol Hill staffer myself. Doing those things on my own merit allowed me to see a different side of the argument. There's two sides to every coin, right? So I was able to pick apart that narrative that I was being taught growing up in the Black community. But then I was able to compare and contrast some of those things that I learned and say, well, this is true. You do have people who have inherent biases that they don't even know about. So you have to kind of expose it and have that conversation. But we can't walk around and act like everybody has those biases or everybody feels that way. So I think that's what played into my favor when I did decide to become a candidate and now run for city commission. You have so many older folk on the board who've been there for decades that don't have any other insight or knowledge about anything other than Albany and Black politics. That's it. They've never sat down and had a conversation with a white conservative. Hell, they probably never sit down and had a conversation with a white Democrat. They just know that I'm Black and that's it. And I'm going to legislate like it. So there's just no outside perspective from anything. So when you try to come at a different angle with an idea and play devil's advocate, they call you all these names. They say that you're in it for the white man or you're in it for this, because they don't understand that there are other perspectives to get the same goal done but they've never tapped into it because they've always been in that same mindset for decades. So me running for commission is truly shaking things up in my hometown.
Okay. What is you mentioned kind of like the one track mind, this mindset of I'm black, so it's only a black agenda. But on the other side, you have, credible concerns and there in many people's view about certain issues. You're in the state of Georgia. I think one of the hot button things in the last couple of months is the Georgia voting, the new Georgia voting laws, and some debates. We've heard everything from this Jim Crow 2.0 to the opposite of that this is actually giving more freedom and more access to voting. How do you break through that? You mentioned that as an issue, right? How do you break through that mindset of, okay, I'm black, so I'm only going to focus on quote unquote black issues? Do you think there's a space or place in the political climate that we're currently in, to say, let's focus on what is quote unquote American issues, or is that type of siloed politicking and policy formation or activism endemic and current to the moment, and it's not going anywhere? What are your thoughts on that?
I would agree with the last statement that you made. I don't think it helps the conversation. It's like, I'm black. I grew up in a majority black city. It was never hard for me to register to vote. I mean, you open up an app, you put in your first name, last name, put in your driver's license number, and you're literally registered. So when I hear this conversation just about making it easier to register to vote, I truly need to see an example of how people are able to register to vote. Is it that we want to try to make it more easy for people to vote who aren't legal? Because the last time I checked, Jay, if you are a legal United States citizen and you have a driver's license, literally you go to the Georgia Secretary of State app that you can download on an iPhone or an Android. You type in your first name, last name, and driver's license number, and you're registered in 5 seconds. So this whole debate about making it easier, it's already easy as hell for people who are legal to vote. So I've just been confused in the language. I don't know if they're trying to pressure this language on the one-track minded folk so they can try to feed into a frenzy of, oh yes, look, if nobody's in agreement with making it easier to vote, they're a racist. But then the people on the other side of that corner saying, it's already easy to vote. What are you talking about? So it's a language thing. They're crafting a message that's getting people riled up. I'll give you an example. To be completely honest with you, if people would have saw the first version of that GOP bill out of Georgia, I mean, they thought the one that was passed is Jim Crow 2.0. They didn't see the first version of that bill. And so literally you had people up in arms about not being able to pass out water and food in lines. But Jay, if we're going to be completely honest about the conversation, if you ask anybody in Georgia, the majority of times when people are passing out food and water within 100 feet of a precinct, they're usually a part of an activist group. They're usually wearing a shirt that supports a group or has a koozie or something that signifies that they're a part of some type of agenda or group. Candidates can't campaign within 100 feet of a precinct. I can't wear my boss's shirt in line to go vote for him in 100 feet of a precinct. So it's that same line of logic. They're just taking that and shifting the language and say anybody that disagrees with passing out water in line is a racist. But they're not adding to that point to say, who are the folks that are passing out water? They probably got on purple Fair Fight Action shirts. So it's about being honest about the conversation and debunking the myths, because what it's doing to our community, the Black community, is just getting people riled up in arms over stuff that's just simply not true. Like, I do think that there are a lot of things that could have been completely different about that bill and things that were wrong. But I just think in the overall sense, to call it Jim Crow 2.0 is a slap in the face to Jim Crow and people like my great grandmother who lived during that era. It's just not fair to the conversation. We have to be honest.
I totally agree. Particularly, I think, as you mentioned, calling Jim Crow 2.0, using the hyper sensitive language, and then outright lying about what the content of the bill is. How are you connecting to voters? You obviously have a different, or I guess you could say typical, different than the typical ideological beliefs than what's expected of most Black people. So how are you connecting with voters?
Yeah, that's a great question, Jay. I'm being just me. Like
Mhm.
I made a video the other day and say, look, people know where I worked, they know my background, and they should be proud of that. I mean, a kid from East Albany who went from poverty to being a first-gen college student to working in the United States Congress, the most sophisticated legislative body on earth.
Mhm.
I don't give a crap what you believe in, what political party you're a part of. That is a story that we should be proud of. But it's sad because there are folks in my community that are attacking me for that. They're calling me everything besides my name because of my work history and the things that I've done. But I've been able to be better for myself and for my family. You would think that people would be so proud of that. So, yes, I do have a different approach. I'm more of a merit. Let's stop blaming everybody else for our troubles, and let's figure out what we can do best for ourselves and our families. That's what's going to be important to end the cycle of poverty, to get our kids more educated and more free. It's not going to be about sitting around beating ourselves down, being a victim. So that's my approach. A lot of times, and I'm glad you brought up this point about the hyper like emotion appeal. That's literally how Joe Biden won. Like I go around talking to hundreds of people all the time, and they don't really like him, but he played into the emotions because of what was going on during that time. So that's the way that people easily get Black voters riled up, is by playing into emotions. It's never a realistic approach of, let's be honest, guys. Let's be honest about the conversation. Like there was a guy in my hometown of Albany that went around the town telling people that he was going to lower utility rates. That was a blatant lie. But knowing Black voters that live in rental properties, they care about a high utility bill. So him going around telling people that was playing to their emotions, but he was lying. A city commissioner cannot lower utility rates. It's just not possible. And then when you ask him about it or challenge him, you say, how are you going to lower utility rates? He can't give you an answer, because if you lower utility rates, guess what goes up? Property rates. So it's not being honest about the conversation in our community and actually educating Black voters on taxes, on property rights, on freedoms, on things that actually matter, things that white voters and white people in general have gotten an early education on, because we have, historically kind of been behind on certain things. But now I want to be a part of that change and educate our voters on the honest truth instead of playing to our emotions. I'm sick of it. You're muted.
Got you. So you mentioned, when I asked you, how you reach these voters, you said by being you. Being you encompasses a lot of experiences. I mentioned working on the presidential campaign, working on Capitol Hill. How's that experience helped you? What have you learned from the experience? And just in general, what has that experience given you that you could bring to the table?
Yeah, Jay. That experience has shaped me into the man I am today, to be completely honest, because like I told you, growing up, being in an all Black school, all Black community, you were kind of taught that all white people are racist. Police officers are against you and they're bad. You were taught all these different narratives that were debunked when I went to a college that had multiple ethnicities. I had Black best friends, I had white best friends, I had Asian best friends. This was debunked when I got hired by a white man to be a top person in his office. That was debunked. So it's all these different experiences as you go and you learn that people are inherently good. You always have evil in every equation, but people are inherently good, I so believe. So that's one experience that I was able to bring back. But two, my legislative experience, me sitting down, talking with my member of Congress and talking to other members and other legislative staffers and writing bills and writing policy and discussing it, how it's going to affect people's lives, whether it's in Flint, Michigan, or whether it's in New York City. I mean, these macro level policies had an effect directly on people's lives. And I think that's what gives me an advantage. As a 22-year-old guy coming back from working on Capitol Hill to run for office in my community, I could provide a sense of knowledge that some of them have never seen before, because some of them, to be honest, have never been out of the state of Georgia. And so it's a level of knowledge that I can bring and a skill set that I can provide if they're so willing to learn from it. Because once again, you have a lot of folks, they're stuck in their ways. They're not going to listen to a younger guy. They know it all. But you have to be willing to have those in-depth conversations, have those knowledgeable conversations to move Albany forward, not believe what you want to believe because you just think you're right about everything. I think that's what we're seeing right now in our city commission. And it's time for a shakeup. It's time for a radical shakeup on the Albany City Commission, for sure. And I can bring that.
So speaking of those higher levels of, participation in government and being a part of higher level government positions, what are and I'm honestly not necessarily familiar. I've never personally attempted anything political in terms of election or running for office. What are some of the hurdles that you faced? I want to start there, and then I have a follow up to that.
Yeah, some of the hurdles I face. To be completely honest, Jay, I mean, some of the hurdles I face, I mean, from social media, right? Like in some of my positions, I've had to have a real social media presence, and I've gotten threats. I've had people call me names, everything besides what my mama named me. And guess what, Jay? The majority of those people were people that looked like me. It was because they weren't used to seeing a different side of the coin, seeing someone that didn't think like them, or they weren't equipped with the ability to handle someone that does not think exactly how they think. And this goes way back to so many other things. I mean, you can talk about people's relationships and how they deal with folks, but they just were so upset that who is this black dude that's not a John Lewis Democrat? You know what I'm saying? It's like, how dare he? How dare he? Who are you to be that? And so and then, you know, it's funny. I never once had that level of animosity towards someone that didn't believe what I believe. I was so happy to go to happy hours and meet. One of my best friends works for Speaker Pelosi. Like I would be so happy to go meet a Chuck Schumer staffer or meet a Nancy Pelosi staffer because I actually want to learn from them. Like, what the hell are you going through over there? How does it look working for a top Democrat leader? And I actually want to learn from their experiences. But on the other side, vice versa, it just did not work the same. I was treated with so much hatred. People were upset that I'm a black conservative and that I'm for faith, family, and freedom. How could you not be for entitlement? How could you not be for big government? How could you not be for all the things that I believe? And I'm like, hey, dude, you can believe what you want to believe, but you don't have to drag me through the mud because I'm not with you 100%. So those are sometimes some of the experiences I faced. But two, also, I've had a lot of back and forth with folks on Capitol Hill who thought they, once again, knew everything and weren't really open to learning from other people. And I think that's what has really equipped me to be so successful at such a young age. I'm willing to sit down and talk to anybody, Jay. I don't care what your political ideology is.